Welcome to the Mile High Hoops podcast. And I love this time of year because it is the heart of basketball season. You know, some think of it as the dog days. I think of it as we've got college hoops. We've got the NBA going on. Last night I was doing a little Jake scouting, looking at some Rutgers players, seeing which ones actually stack up to the task for the NBA draft coming up in the spring, which the Nuggets don't have a draft pick, so won't be as fun on this show and to talk about content-wise on denversports.com. But nonetheless, I still want to get a feel for the next stars of the NBA. But the current stars of the NBA are putting on quite a product, and that Cavs game the other night against the Thunder was something special. I know a lot of people have talked about this across the league and a lot of different podcasters, but I really enjoyed watching that game. And, you know, last night we had the Rockets and Grizzlies, who are 2-3 in the West, right ahead of the Nuggets going at it. Rockets make a massive comeback push, and they're going to be in Denver on Wednesday night. So excited to see them play because they're playing some really good basketball. And you started to see the seedings of this with the Rockets. Last year when they beat the Nuggets, they acquired Jeff Green, have a young team. They beat the Nuggets a couple times at Ball Arena. First time the Nuggets had lost with their whole starting five to anybody, and they lose to that Rockets team. And this year, Jalen Green looks like he's taken a step forward the last couple months. Alperen Sengun is a very special guy. And then the Terror twins and Thompson and Tari Eason seem like they're doing something cool. So really excited for that game Wednesday. We're talking about that on Thursday's pod as a recap for sure. But on today's podcast, I wanted to talk about how it's time for the Denver Nuggets to make their run in the West and in their record. The Nuggets right now are kind of bouncing around. You know, they're winning 2, losing 1, all that type of stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if they lose tonight because it's really hard to win both games of this baseball-style series. But I go back to the time, around this time in the championship season that the Nuggets played, right? Mid-January. And this is when the Nuggets were on that 9-game win streak that really propelled them through the rest of the year. They go on a couple more multiple-game win streaks right around then as well. And their record takes off from a team who had been, you know, struggling a little bit at like 14-10 or so. And then all of a sudden they're 42-18, right? So the Nuggets this year, right now, as we talk, are 23-15. They're on a 3-game win streak. Play the Mavericks tonight, Rockets on Wednesday, and then they've got a needed trip to Florida. And I say needed trip to Florida because I'm going to be jealous when it's cold as heck here in Denver that the boys are in Florida. And then we've got, if Joel Embiid plays, in the Philadelphia 76ers coming up. So this is a time for the Denver Nuggets. I talked about stacking wins before, right? They had a weaker part of their schedule, and they moved through that part of the schedule, I think, like 7-2 or something. Now is the time where they have a couple tests, you know, against the Dallas Mavericks tonight. Second part of that baseball-style series. Can they make the proper adjustments? Can they adjust to the adjustments the Mavericks are going to make after a couple days off? Playing a very good Rockets team. The Heat, not good right now. Jimmy Butler could be back for that game. We'll see. The Magic, feisty team. 76ers, a lot of star power. The Kings, hot as heck since Christie became the coach. The Minnesota Timberwolves, a little desperate. Knocked you out of the playoffs last year. The New York Knicks are coming up on the schedule as well. They absolutely blew you out at home. So a lot of teams here where you can learn something from the Denver Nuggets. And what I love about this opportunity is that the Nuggets are now fully healthy, right? Aaron Gordon came back into the lineup on Sunday night for that win, 112-101 comeback effort, 19-point comeback for the Nuggets. They lead the league in double-digit comebacks, which, as Michael Malone said, I love it, but it's also horrible because it means we're coming back from behind. AG is going to be limited on minutes, played 18 minutes a night, or 18 minutes in his first night back. Probably going to be hovering around 20 to 22 minutes for a little while. They're going to keep it really chill with that calf strain, right? Already re-injured it once. They got to be careful. So I wouldn't be surprised if AG continues to come off the bench for a little while here. And it means AG didn't close in that game as well. And I've talked about this on the podcast, but when Russell Westbrook closes, the Nuggets have struggled a little bit because their spacing struggles. What they did in that Dallas Mavericks game, as the Mavericks played without Kyrie and Luka, so this does come with a caveat, but the Nuggets went on a giant run to close out that game, starting in the end of the third quarter all the way throughout the course of the fourth quarter, is they used Jamal Murray as the shooting guard, and they used Russell Westbrook as the primary ball handler. And what that allowed them to do was create more spacing because a team is going to pick up Russell Westbrook with the ball on the perimeter, even though they might not pick him up without the ball on the perimeter. And it's because he can pass, he can drive. You don't want to let him get ahead of steam. You want to get into those passing lanes. So it basically created a spacing advantage for the Nuggets with Jokic in the two-man game, which Westbrook and Jokic have proven that they've got a special two-man game cooking on their own right, as does Jamal and Jokic, going for the second dueling triple-double effort that they've had so far. So they adjusted, the Nuggets have, to Russell Westbrook in the closing lineup. And that's one of the things I'm watching. How does Russell Westbrook's continued integration into the Nuggets, how does that get affected by Aaron Gordon coming back? Because Aaron himself isn't the greatest spacer, as we know. And it's not always about space, right? Aaron's going to offer many more opportunities for the Nuggets to collect rebounds. He's going to improve their defense drastically, I hope. They hope. And already before Aaron's come back, you've seen some of the numbers start to take an uptick. Some of the things we've talked about. The defensive rebounding percentage from the Nuggets, which has been horrible all year, lower third of the league, is now in the middle of the pack. 19%, or 19th at 74.9%. The advanced metrics are starting to look a little bit better because of that stretch of basketball they just played against some weaker teams. So now we're going to see if that recipe that has worked the last couple of weeks can be put up to the test. And we're going to see how it works now that Aaron Gordon is being reintegrated into the lineup. I'd love to see Jamal Murray play a little bit better, of course. He had a little stretch there. It seemed like things were turning around, and then he's had a couple rough games. We've talked about Peyton Watson potentially as a starter over Christian Brown. I don't think Christian's been bad. He had a bad stretch in December. I think he's been decent since. But Peyton's been phenomenal. And Peyton had some great plays on Sunday in Dallas again. So it's a couple things I'll be looking for if the Nuggets are to step up. They need to continue to improve that defensive rebounding number. That's so key to them, especially for a team that runs out in transition. They have the most transition points in the NBA. More defensive rebounds, more transition points. Simple as that. Aaron Gordon back. More defense, more stops, more rebounds, more transition points. Potentially more steals as well. More transition points. But I don't think transition points necessarily is the recipe for success for the Nuggets, particularly when it comes to playoff time, because the game slows down. So I'm looking at the Nuggets in their half-court offenses. When the pace of play is not high, can they continue to score? Because I think a lot of what the Nuggets are doing right now is built off the fact that they're playing at such a high pace, at least through the first three quarters of the game. And that's not a good sign. Because historically speaking, teams that are built off pace struggle in the playoffs. The Pacers were the exception to the rule last year, and they had an exceptionally easy run into the playoffs, or through the playoffs, I should say. Banged up Knicks team, young Orlando Magic team. So can the Nuggets improve their efficiency and effectiveness without increasing that pace? I think that's something that's going to be essential, something that I'll be looking for as well in this next little period. I also want to point out where the Nuggets have been as a clutch team, because that's a good barometer. More teams play like they do in the playoffs in clutch time to close games, right? So this season, in clutch, the Nuggets have a net rating of plus 18. That's fourth in the league behind the Cavs, who have a net rating of 53. That's absolutely insane. That means they're outscoring opponents by 53 points per 100 possessions in the clutch. The Magic, who are 31, Oklahoma City at 25, and the Nuggets at 18, Celtics at 12. So that's a real positive indicator that the Nuggets have a recipe for success in the playoffs, right? I do think there's a really good team somewhere inside the Nuggets. I think this stretch of basketball, we're going to find out if that good team can exist over a sustained period, right? We've seen it basically over quarters. We've seen it over halves. We've seen it over certain segments of games. We have not seen it for total games. We've not seen it over an extended stretch of games, really. So that's what I'm going to be looking for over this next stretch of basketball. And to me, that's the telltale indicator for the Nuggets of if they're going to have maybe a first-round exit, a second-round exit, or maybe even get to the conference finals and then get smoked by Oklahoma City, or if they can rise to the Oklahoma City tier. And I do think it's important to keep in mind that anything can happen in the NBA. So it's important that the Nuggets continue to build because you never know what injury is next, whether it's to your team or your opponent's team. The Nuggets got exceptionally lucky with the breaks they got in their championship season. I'm not saying they wouldn't have won either way, but things broke their way. Who's to say things won't break the Nuggets' way again this year? So it's important that they continue to build, even if it looks like they're a step behind those elite teams in the league, Oklahoma City, Cleveland, and Boston. Because they are on the tier of Houston and Memphis. And they're going to prove it when they play Houston on Wednesday night on the second half of back-to-back. I have a good feeling about it. This is Jake Shapiro, Mile High Hoops Podcast. Make sure you tune in every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 o'clock on YouTube. Like and subscribe to that YouTube, Denver Sports, and make sure you're following all of our written content over at denversports.com.